Hello, and welcome to the Microsoft Customer Success Day for Dynamics 365 and Power Platform. So what are we here for today? We're here to talk about how customers are succeeding with Microsoft, how they're delivering adoption and achieving real business value. My name is Janet Roob. I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager here in the UK, and I have some superstars for you today. So first of all, we have Emma Claire Shaw from DEFRA. She's from the UK and she's the service owner for Power Platform. We have Doug Hubbard. He's from Transport Canada and Digital Services Directorate. And finally, we have John Wiseman. He's from Morgan Sindall in the UK and is the Digital Workplace Manager. We're all awful keen to actually hear about how people successfully adopt Dynamics and Power Platform. So we decided to bring you the best here today. So I'm going to start with John. John, would you like to tell us a wee bit about yourself and your organisation, what problems you encountered and how you were successful?
Thanks very much. So my name's John Wiseman. I'm the Digital Workplace Manager at the Morgan Sindall Group. So just to tell you a little bit about Morgan Sindall Group first. So we're a construction and regeneration company. We deliver house building, construction, infrastructure, urban regeneration, office fit out and property services. And we're mostly based in the UK. We do have some places across in Europe. Our business is a group of 8 businesses working in a decentralised model. So what that means is that all our businesses have their own control, have their own budgets and the way that they do work. Basically, we just want them to do well and make money. Each of our own businesses has their own sales, service and marketing departments. So that's where the decentralisation really works for us. But across all the 7,000 employees at the Morgan Sindall Group, we're all united by a culture that puts the customer and quality first, above all else. Now, we understand that to do that, we need to engage in technology and we need to invest in that technology. And really what I'm going to talk about now is how we've actually succeeded with 10 environments of Dynamics 365 across our group that's actually solved a lot of the problems that we was originally happening. So the problem we was trying to resolve, first of all, was the fact that when I first came into post, which is 2006, we had a incumbent Microsoft partner that had done a fairly good job of rolling out. We had 3 CRM 2015 environments at that time. I came from a background of CRM consultancy, working with Microsoft products since the turn of the century. Makes me sound old, doesn't it? But I was brought in to manage the systems and to work with the partners to ensure that the products we was building were fit for the purpose, and we was able to have somewhere to go with the products they were doing. There was, however, not a lot of strategy that had been taken at that time. So trying to realise what the benefits were proving a bit difficult. Some of the build standards were seen as a bit substandard. And of course, we were starting to get maybe a lack of customer engagement and engagement with some of our stakeholders. And that's purely due to the feedback from users saying it doesn't really solve a lot of our problems. So when I came in, one of the first things that I wanted to bring apart was to build an internal team rather than having third parties and the reliance upon a third party. So the thing is about an internal team that they're not just product owners, they're not just Dynamics 365 experts or even industry experts, but they're experts in the fabric of how the heartbeat of the Morgan Sindall Group works. So therefore, they understand the individual businesses, and that's on a personal basis as well. They understand how the super users, the stakeholders, and the executives all operate. So therefore, very quickly we can understand some of their business needs. So with that in mind, we was able to quickly tailor and deploy solutions, meet the ever-changing landscape that we face. And that means that we can do constant development across our tenant using the absolute latest technology that Microsoft can give us. And a bit later on, I'm just going to talk about one of those technologies that we've recently deployed to one of our businesses. So having an internal team makes our supporting of the wave upgrades easier. Of course, that happens twice a year. We need to ensure we have business continuity. The users and the technical resolutions can be resolved a lot quicker as well without having to raise tickets with third parties. And we've also developed a set of build standards. So this is something that we worked on in the early days to ensure that when we are working with partners and we are building products internal to the organisation, that we're using Microsoft best practices and the best practices of all our colleagues and peers that were involved in the Dynamics 365 market. We also understood that actually having what we call heads of business or of heads of CRM in all businesses deployed was the great strategy. These people actually work on the coalface. So these are the ones that are experts in their own business. They understand how their business operates. And they're the interface with the senior leadership teams and the users. And they become the go-to people within their business. But not only that, they're experts in Dynamics 365 from a functional understanding. So the time they come to us with a requirement, of course, the functional aspects have been fleshed out. And it's just for us, therefore, to bring about the technical aspects of that. So having that internal team, we have a couple of really good achievements fairly recently, which I'll just talk about. The first one is that with one of our businesses called Lovell Refurb. So they do refurbishments in block of local authority housing. When we first engaged with these about 5 years ago, they were using an Excel spreadsheet, and that Excel spreadsheet had 120 columns. And they used that to manage their projects. And it was completely unwieldy and used to take about 2 weeks for them to actually get the Excel spreadsheet together with all the actions and activities that were required. We, 5 years ago, deployed project service automation, and we was one of the first people in the country to actually deploy that. Project service automation reduced that 2-week building time of the Excel spreadsheet down to about 1 day. So all of a sudden, we've made 11 days of gain to making each project. We've now moved that to project operations, and that's made that 1 day down to 1 hour. So now when new projects come along, we're able to deploy these very quickly, and the user and service teams are able to go and work on their projects almost immediately. And that's given us a real advantage in the marketplace. Another example is with our construction business. So our construction business builds bridges, tunnels, hospitals and schools. They're all very large scale projects. We have, they respond to a lot of tenders. So therefore there's a massive tender process. And within that tender process, there's an approvals process to ensure that it's the right type of business for Morgan Sindall Group and to make sure that the costings we're putting for the tender is correct. So there are approval processes all the way along that. We've recently built a new functionality that allows the approvers to go into teams at set points and actually do the approvals of the business process flows. And that's enabled that business to be able to be more and more reactive to the tenders that we've done. And that puts them in a really good place to win better tenders and also to ensure that the tenders that they do go for are the right type of business for the Morgan Sindall Group. I think one thing that we talk about is giving advice to people on if you was in our position, what's the one thing that has made maybe a massive change and fundamentally the thing that's made the difference that differentiates us from maybe some of the people that we work with, some of our competitors. And I'd say this, that if a company is dedicated to making an investment into Dynamics 365 as part of their business strategy, then the building of an internal team of resources will certainly help drive the adoption because we can respond to continuous change and rapid development, and that matches our business needs. And having that internal team has been a real game changer for us, and it's allowed us to produce Microsoft Dynamics 365 products that are fit for purpose, enable the businesses to have a real change in the marketplace.
That's fantastic, John. I always get such a buzz when I hear such amazing stories like you and your achievement of the business value. It really does hit home the amount of money and time you'll have saved. So Thank you very, very much for sharing your story. Up next, we have Emma from DEFRA in the UK. And she's going to share her story about her Power Platform governance journey. Over to you, Emma.
Thanks, Janet. So I'm Emma Shaw. So I'm the product manager for Power Apps and Automate in the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs in the UK. So we're a central government department. I've been in post for 1 year, and I'm essentially looking at how we can better enable the tools for use across our business. We've got a bit of added complexity in that we don't just deliver IT for DEFRA. We also deliver IT for 5 other arm's length bodies that form part of DEFRA Group. So that gives us a little bit of a complicated estate. We've got lots in common, but lots of different ways of working. And we're trying to standardise those as much as possible to streamline delivery. So we're about 30,000 people across those 6 organisations. And essentially, when I came into post last year, we had a largely ungoverned estate of Power Apps and Automate flows. So there are about 1,500 applications on our tenancy, most of which were in the default environment and had been created with no involvement with IT. We did have a few applications that have been delivered as part of formal projects, so we were starting to see the value for those kind of more business critical solutions as well. And then we had over 2,500 flows. Again, lots of those were orphaned. We didn't know what they were or what people were using the solution for. So we could see that there was value. So we had that benefit that we knew people wanted to use it and they could see how they might want to use it. But we had a challenge in really realising that value and kind of getting our arms around it and making sure that that it was being used for the right things. So the key objectives really for me coming into this were around simplifying usage of the platform, making it clear to the business what it's for and what it's not for, streamlining delivery, so really realising the benefits of that quick turnaround, especially for the small and simple stuff and the citizen development solutions. And then the last piece is really about that empowerment, so empowering the business to utilise the platform, but also understand the commitment that they need to make to using the platform on a long-term basis. So what I thought I'd talk you through is how the journey we've been on essentially to develop that Power Apps and Automate Centre of Excellence. And essentially we've got kind of 3 pillars here. It's going to sound like a really linear journey, but it absolutely wasn't, as you know, Janet. So there's a lot of ping-ponging back and forth in between these, but I'm going to talk through them in a linear fashion to make it clear. So essentially 3 pillars. The first one is that strategic foundation. So that's really understanding how you want to use the platform in your organisation and setting those kind of principles for using it. And the first thing really was about getting that dedicated product lead in place. So for us, that was my post. We then spent quite a bit of time defining what the business requirements were we wanted the platform to deliver on. So what were the capabilities we really wanted it to meet? And we had that kind of help of having all those existing solutions on the platform as that starter. We also did an architecture assessment of competitor products just to make sure that we were backing the right horse and that Power Apps and Automate really met the needs that the business were trying to deliver on, which it really did. Which is why we're sticking with it. We also set some guardrails for our colleagues, so not just for our citizen developers, but also for the formal projects that are getting delivered. So we made it really clear to people what the use cases were that the platform should be used for in our organisation and the principles for delivery. And then the last piece, which has been really fundamental and underpins a lot of the other things on this slide, is our adaptive governance model. So this is a governance model that assesses solutions by complexity and scope, and then essentially puts them into categories, which then determines the environment strategy behind how they're delivered and the processes they need to go through, so that those small and simple things can be delivered quickly and easily, and the more complex, more critical solutions still have that kind of rigour of governance around them. The second pillar is the technical foundation. So in here we've got our environment strategy, so where should things be delivered on the platform. We've also got the security side and our data loss prevention policy, so making it clear which connectors people can use and restricting that as appropriate. We then installed the COE starter kit and built monitoring flows to underpin the governance model, and that piece is definitely how long is a piece of string job? You can keep going for as long as you want to in terms of the automation that you can build. We've also built a professional development capability within the business. So making sure that we do have that those pro developers available to support our citizen developers, but also to develop solutions for areas of the business that don't have that capacity. We've got a very long technical backlog for things we want to add to the platform, and that is just ever growing. So we're maintaining quite a big backlog, but also continuously prioritising that so that when our business colleagues tell us that they want something, we can log that demand and make sure that we're looking at the right things that they want. We've also built templates and component libraries to give our citizen developers particularly a bit of a step up when they're delivering stuff and make sure that they're delivering things that kind of have the same look and feel. And we've also developed our own maker standards as a guide to citizen developers and projects to make sure people are doing things in a standardised way, and we're spot checking solutions to make sure people stick with those. And then the final pillar, which is really the most important one to get right, is the change and adoption piece. So obviously we've done internal and external communications as we've been working on this. So we've spoken to a lot of other government organisations and private organisations. But we also do very regular comms in every channel available to us across our 6 organisations to make sure people know what's going on and where they can go to. We've also built out a SharePoint site, our Power Platform Hub, which is our kind of one-stop shop. So a lot of the other things in this pillar are shared on that platform. So we've got things like training and guidance on there. We've got DEFRA case studies, DEFRA group case studies. So obviously, it's really useful that Microsoft's website is crammed full of great case studies, but having them from our own organisation really helps the business to understand how they might be able to use it in our organisation. But it also gives them contact details for the developers in case they want to copy what's been done before, and get in touch with the people that are behind it. And we've spent quite a bit of time evolving our community of practice as well, to encourage that kind of peer-to-peer support. And we've also built a network of business sponsors and champions, and that's really growing too. So a couple of things I just wanted to pull out on here, I suppose, in terms of key learnings. The first one is the work is never done. The continuous improvement and development is key. There is always room for improvement. As I mentioned, we're developing our approach based on customer feedback, and I feel like we're going back and forwards along all of the things on here as we kind of grow our offering. We're trying to add as much automation and self-service as we can to the platform because we're such a large organisation, and that's all possible using the tools. So it's a good way of demonstrating what's possible as well. And as I mentioned, the technical backlog just grows and grows. And then the final thing I was going to just cover on here was just pulling out a few things. I think if you just remember one thing from my piece here, it didn't pull them out. I guess the sort of top 4 things I would say would be the dedicated product lead. So having one person to lead the charge, build that vision, and be dedicated to evolving the platform approach. So that's been really critical to our success. And we've identified that we're going to need that post on a long-term basis. The COE starter kit piece, so I was hoping we'd install that and then everything would just be sorted, but it's very much a starter kit. There's an awful lot of evolution needed depending on what you're trying to monitor and govern, so that will be a scaling job depending on how large your organisation is. And then the Power Platform Hub piece, so having that one place to go, and I know the PowerCat team have now made a template site that people can use for that, but yeah, having that one place to go has been essential for people to find out what they can use the platform for, and it's given us a platform to deliver a lot of our rich content. So now where I was getting loads of inquiries when I first started in this post, I can just direct people to that information. And then the very last point I wanted to make was just really the importance of bringing the business customers on the journey. So the community of practice piece and the business sponsors piece, it's really important to have that commitment and that sponsorship from the business and that feedback from customers all the way along. So we use the community of practice for the peer-to-peer support, helping customers understand how others are using the platform, and also giving them somewhere to come when they want to ask for new features and new connectors, for example. And then the business sponsors and champions, that's really about driving adoption from top down and bottom up, and also ensure that commitment of utilising the platform on a long-term basis. So really trying to assuage that risk of orphaned and unmaintained solutions later down the line.
Thank you very much, Emma. It's a lot to cram in, a whole year to cram into a few minutes. We've had some fun together, the pair of us, at hacks and things, and I've really impressed with your amazing hard work and success. And we know that because the amount of people are now asking for Power Apps, and DEFRA is getting bigger every day. So thank you very much, Emma. I would like to introduce you now to Douglas, or Doug Hubbard. He's from Transport Canada, and he's going to share with us his story as well. Take it away, Doug.
Hello, everyone. My name is Douglas Hubbard. I'm a manager at Transport Canada. Transport Canada is responsible for the Canadian government transportation policies and programs. Our role is to promote the safe, secure, efficient, and environmentally responsible transportation infrastructure for all of our country. Canada has some interesting challenges particular to Canada in that we're the second largest nation in the world from a purpose of landmass, but only the 37th in terms of population. That causes a lot of infrastructure across a very large area supported by a very small population. Our organization represents about 7,000 people, and we have to look after coast to coast to coast, as it were, 3 oceans, and everything from certainly up north when it's very cold, all the way to some desert biomes. There's a lot of variety and a lot of moving parts across all the different types of transportation. Now, where I come in is I am the manager of the Power Apps Center of Excellence, or PACE, which was established in the autumn of 2020. And our goal is to support the enterprise-wide utilization of Power Apps and, to a lesser extent, Power Platform across the entire department. Our guiding philosophy at all times is teaching people how to fish. We have some very, very smart people on my team that are looking after building some great ideas, some great systems, and providing some great structure to the whole department. But we never wanted to be the only people who can do this. So we work hard as best we can so that anyone who wants to work with Power Platform can do so. When we started, we had 2 major roles. One was Center of Excellence activities for governance and process. The second was actually building apps, because as I mentioned earlier, we have some of the best people in the department for building things. Very quickly, though, we reached our 3rd core responsibility, which was supporting citizen development. Very early on in our journey of a Center of Excellence, it became clear that there was a lot of potential with having citizen developers in the department. But the question was, how do you make that work and how do you manage risk? So I'm going to talk about the activity of citizen development. To start with, let's talk about the definition of a citizen developer. Gardner has some pretty clever definitions I've seen, but for the purposes of our discussion, we'll say this is somebody who does not come from a traditional IT background, someone who's possibly an end user, someone who knows their business process in and out because that's what they live every moment of every day. They're usually people who are highly motivated and extremely interested in fixing a problem that they know exists using technology. In this case, Power Apps or some facet of Power Platform. Now, what does a citizen developer need? If you're approaching this from the traditional IT environment, which is where I'm from, we quickly realized that our citizen developers' needs are very different than that of the traditional IT developer or the professional developer, if you were. They have that motivation, they have that drive. What they don't have is the background in how to build systems or possibly even any serious grounding in the technology itself. So our role is to try and give them what they need in that technology and in that understanding. The other thing they need is a robust and sensible infrastructure that lets them do their job in a way that meets all the regulations that are out there. Every organization is different, but given we're a government organization, we are supposed to follow very strict, very immutable guidelines, or should I say rules, on building an application. And we help them understand that. Where and when can they develop? That's an important question that you have to ask. What works best for your organization? It's not a good idea to assume that they can do everything a professional developer can. One thing that we determined early on is that Power Pages, for all of its utility, is not a good fit for citizen developers. It is complex, potentially so anyways, because of its basically being web pages. But more to the point for us, if you're using Power Pages, now you're external facing. External facing means you're now potentially viewed, I should say, by all of the Canadian public and maybe even beyond. That's a much larger scale of risk. when it comes to possible problems arising compared to an internal system. That also is magnified in terms of maintenance. For while citizen developers can be highly interested and highly motivated, they don't often stay in the same place for very long because of that very same motivation and energy. Having a good strategy on how to allow maintenance after the fact can be challenging in some cases, again, increasing the risk for an outside-facing, external-facing app. So that's where we've personally drawn the line. Another factor that we consider is that if it's going to require low code versus no code, that's also not a good fit for a citizen developer. Admittedly, that is a little tricky when you're talking Canvas versus model driven, but the fact remains, if you're looking at a system that requires that level of intricacy, now you're looking at minimum as fusion team development, where citizen developers and professional developers could work together to build something. How do they develop? We have a system where when someone first wants to try using Power Apps, they're welcome to use our default tenant. I erroneously sometimes prefer that as to the sandbox to the executive, which my developing team continues to berate me for, because of course that's a type of environment, not actually the name of the environment. But in any event, the default environment is where we let folks come, we give them the license, and we let them try whatever they like. It's their playground, with the understanding that they can only try things out for fun there. They cannot use it for actual production needs. Once they want to have more than one person using it, or they're very serious about bringing it to the user base, then we work with them to create their own set of environments, development, acceptance, and production. And somebody on our team built a wonderful automated set of pipelines, so we show them how to use it, and they have the managed environments in order to build something that can eventually meet production requirements. Which brings me to the last point, which how does PACE effectively support and regulate all these things? We try to take a multifaceted approach. First, we make sure they have the tools they need in terms of those robust environments I mentioned. We try to make sure through our wiki and other sources, give them as much support as we can in where to find information and how to build things. The team itself offers support to them. We try to make sure that they have everything they need, and we also keep an eye out in that we monitor using the toolkit, the Center of Excellence toolkit, to make sure that when somebody first establishes the environment, we reach out to them proactively and give them some idea of what they can do. As a corollary to that, we also make sure that nobody starts sharing it with 20 or 30 people. We watch for activity levels and cut off as a risk management perspective to make sure that nobody's unilaterally going to production. And that's very important because, as I touched on earlier, we have very clear regulations on what's allowable and what's not. An application to be used by individuals in the government for production purposes needs to be fully compliant from an accessibility point of view, and it has to be bilingual, fully functional in English et en français. Many people don't know all of these rules, so that's one of the last things that we do for a citizen developer on their journey to reach building a new system. We actually work with them at the end of the process to guide them through all the approvals and make sure that they actually meet all the standards before they go to production. If I can use an analogy, you can build a house, but at least in my jurisdiction of the world, you cannot, however, have it fully approved until a certified electrician comes and makes sure your house is up to code or building code. And that's what we do. We spend a few days with them to make absolutely certain that everything is up to code. The wiring's in there, it meets all those standards. And once that's done, we walk them also through some of the paperwork, which you can't reasonably expect them to know. We also work with them, as I should mention, on the maintenance angle. We work with them to make sure that everybody understands who can do what, and that there is a responsibility for their application in the long run to look after it. It is, in the end, a win-win prospect for everyone, because unfortunately there is always infinite demand for finite supply. We simply cannot meet all the requirements and all the expectations of the department and the organization that we try to support. So by working with them and getting out ahead of things, we're trying to make sure that since the work's going to happen anyways, we're going to avoid shadow IT, and what they build is infinitely better, because we can keep an eye on it, than the infamous Excel spreadsheets that are so often a critical part of the business model. We are, in effect, trying to get on the train before it leaves the station and it leaves us behind. I'm obligated, Transport Canada, I have to use these sort of vehicle analogies. If there's one thing that I'd like to end with in terms of offering some advice to anyone, so whether it's the citizen development aspect or another part of the Center of Excellence. Perhaps you're establishing one or you're trying to figure out your next steps. Always look at it as going up that flight of stairs, one step, two steps at a time. It's very difficult to jump up an entire flight, but if you take it piece by piece, you will get there. Thank you.
Doug, I love listening to you. Your wit is great and your knowledge is even better. So thank you so much for giving us all of your insight. I know this is a bit of a world famous case study, so thank you very much, Doug, for taking the time. We're just going to end very, very quickly with 8 tips for generating success. And everything you're going to hear now has been talked about by each one of our superstars today. So the first one is have a dedicated product owner, someone who has sole responsibility in the creation of the strategy and vision, business value, change and adoption, and admin and governance. Not one of our speakers, all of our speakers said this was important. Have a product owner. If you're going to have a product owner, you should have a product sponsor. Someone who is accountable, will rally the troops, and has the desire and time to be active and visible. I'm going to repeat that has the time to be active and visible. If they don't have the time, respectfully, they're not the right person. We can't have a sponsor in name only. They have a job to do, and we need them to do it because they are important. Be accountable. Create a steering group. Groups of individuals representing each impacted group who can challenge, support, and be the champion for the change. But whatever you do not forget the business. Each one of our speakers here today talked about being in the business, letting the business hear the voice. Commit yourself to a success planning workshop, whether this is with a CSM or without. Basically, I want you to take a baseline. Where are you now? Where are you today? What activities needs completed? What KPI markers need to be set? What will your governance model be? And what will success look like for your organisation and for your individuals? If you don't do this, how will you know what you've achieved? Number 5, shout about it. Your organisation is undergoing a change. Tell them about it. Tell them again. Tell them about the benefits. Get your direct managers to tell them. Get the sponsors to tell them why it's fantastic for the organisation. Tell them. See what I'm going there? Create an army, sometimes called a champions network. These are our foot soldiers. These are the people on the ground that spread the word. Tell them. They support the change and the feedback concerns back to the implementation team. I mean, how else will you know what's going on if you don't have a feedback loop? I got overexcited there. Let's go back one. Launch, celebrate, have some fun. I did a 2-day hack with Emma from DEFRA and we had a blast. Change is hard. Make a big deal about it. Hitting the go button, it's taken us a long time to get to that go button, so let's make it an exciting time. Praise and reward those that have supported the change and the journey. They have gone over and above in their day job, so show them some thanks, or I like to say, show them some love. And finally, monitor. Just because you think you have done everything right does not make it so, unfortunately. Check you're setting your KPIs. Check how people are feeling, because change is tough. We as individuals have a habit of returning to our old ways. That's why we go on so many diets. Find this out sooner rather than later. Trust me. Monitor after go live. You'll be grateful. It just ends with me to say thank you. Thank you to Doug, to John, to Emma for being our superstars, for going on this journey with us and sharing their stories. I hope you find today useful and the tricks and tips some benefits. So thank you for joining us today.